masterclass. I'm really pleased and looking forward to hearing Renee's session. I know a lot of people struggle when they communicate about what they do. And I know when I explain it to my friends and family, their eyes sort of glaze over and they have this quizzical look like I still don't get it. So, and I wish we had this session yesterday, because last night at our event, we got a 30-second window to introduce ourselves, and I was in midstream and all of a sudden the bell went ding and I'm thinking, but I haven't got to the why. So I'm really interested, and I know Bill has spoken to Renee a lot about these visual models, so I'm really keen to learn more about that. And as she was sort of saying, these things will help us to, when we do our introductions, help us to stand out amongst our peers, but also in proposals. So it's about why us. So I'm going to hand over to our host, Bill Gerard, who will introduce Renee for this afternoon. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Kerry. And let me start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we all work on and are on today, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And yes, welcome, Renee. I'm really looking forward to seeing the session, and I think everybody's going to love this. I sat in a session with Renee, I guess about a month ago, something like that, one of your short introductory kind of things, and I'm blown away by the whole concept of how we can use models to explain what we do, how we do it, and I think really in many cases understanding ourselves in order to do that, and the process of actually creating the model about who we are and what we do, I think is a really interesting way to think about yourself. So I'm excited by that. And for the rest of you, I got to warn you, Renee is a ball of fire. All right, she loves to interact. So I don't know what you're going to do today, Renee, but I know we're going to love it. So that's all part of the process. So so welcome to our session. I'm going to turn the floor over to you in just a second, but before I do that, can I remind everybody that unless you're going to be speaking, maybe put yourself on mute, just in case we have any difficulties with things like that. And I always recommend to people that when people are sharing slides, as I know Renee is going to do some of, that you also put yourself into side-by-side speaker view, because then what you can do is you can actually see Renee and you can balance it out, so you get half the picture with Renee and half with her slides, and that way you get the impact of the speaker visual as well as the slides. So I always recommend that's an approach. And therefore, if you're doing that, if you want to, you can turn off your videos or you can leave them on. It doesn't really matter. But it's up to you how you do that. So on that note, Renee, you know what your time is like. We've got some time. We're giving you a nice spread of time, and take us through it. And just, I'm really looking forward to this. So welcome.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Kerry. It's a great pleasure to be here to share with you my passion, which is visual models. So I know, given that you're as learning professionals, most of you probably are using some form of visual model in some of the trainings you're presenting, I'm guessing. Kind of see a show of hands of who's already using some sort of visual model in the work that you're doing when you're running the room. Yeah, we're getting a bit of that. Okay. Who's also using visual models in your sales and marketing to talk about and communicate what it is that you do and sell what you do? David, Yoli, yeah, a couple of John. Okay, so a few. Okay, great. So I'm quite, so I know I'm going to kind of make almost assumed knowledge that you already know how to use these visual models in your trainings. And so we're going to focus more on the, what Kerry was saying is, how do you explain to people what it is that you do? For many of us, it's not like when we're at a barbecue and someone says, hey, what do you do? It's not a one-word answer like a plumber or a doctor and people get it and it's done. It kind of takes a bit more explaining. So being able to sort of go through this process that I've created and extract all that genius out of your brain and turn it into some succinct models. It allows you to then communicate what you do really, really clearly and succinctly, so that you can streamline the way you deliver your services and create packages around that, so that you can stand out in a very busy marketplace and a noisy and crowded marketplace, and also then to scale and grow your business and move away from trading time for money, if that's the kind of thing you want to do in terms of leveraging the packages that you offer. So I will share my screen now. And don't ask me what happened there. Okay, so today's agenda, sorry about the animation there. I'm going to look at the power of the visual and look at why visual models are actually so powerful in our communications, and look at some of the research behind that. We're going to look at the kinds of results that I see from the clients that we're working with, and the kind of common problems that tend to show up, and the kind of results that they're moving towards. I'll introduce this Think RAPT system, which is the form visual model system that we have created, and the 5-step process we use for extracting that. Then we'll look at the benefits of doing that, and then some examples of how does this actually look? How do these models look when we translate them into sales brochures, slide decks, things like that. So we'll look at all of those things. So as you're all probably aware, because I feel exhausted by this on a daily basis, we are bombarded with information, and it's actually growing in a big way. So in 1986, we were subjected to about 40 newspapers a day worth of information. Fast forward to 2007, that had already grown to 174 newspapers a day. If I think back to 2007, that was just when I was signing up for Facebook, and think about how much more information I've now been receiving per day. So we are getting so much information per day. So when you're trying to communicate with your audience, this is what you're competing with. And then how do we do that? Because we don't want to be part of the noise of all this information that your audience is receiving. So we want to be able to cut through that. And what we can really harness and take advantage of is that the brain loves visuals. In fact, it dedicates more than 50% to processing visual information. So the visual information grabs your audience's attention, and the research also shows that if you just show something with text or audio, your clients will remember, or the audience will remember, only about 10% of that 3 days later. But if you give them text plus pictures, such as a visual model, they'll actually remember 65% of it. So the brain loves to see the visuals to grab attention, but also in terms of recall and remembering what it is that you've trained and taught in the room, they're going to have, retain more of that information as well, which is obviously what we want if we're going to make a difference with what we're doing in the room. Okay, so what we're getting to is that we want to be able to get visual to get that attention, and so that you can win more clients, get more yeses to those proposals, and grow and scale your business. So I've started my business. So this is I'm actually going to be celebrating my 20th year in business in October, which is a little bit exciting. Fingers crossed we're, not in a lockdown and I can have some sort of party for that. But there are sort of two main variables that I find are the difference between the clients who I see that are going to make it and the ones that won't. And the two things are service delivery. So whether that service delivery is bespoke, so are they constantly reinventing the wheel with every client that they're working with, and all the information is locked in their head, so they get a new client and they've got to work out how they're going to get them from A to B. They look at the problem, find the solution, and come up with how they're going to get them there. Or do they have a proven system where it's very clear, step-by-step structure? When I get a client, it's these 4 steps, or however many steps they have, and it gets them there in the fastest possible way. The second variable that we notice is the audience response. So you might be, great at what you do, but if when you, at a networking event, or, when you're giving that classic elevator pitch, if you're getting a sort of glazed overview and people just don't get it, they're kind of like looking for where they're going to go and get their next drink, or, oh, look, there's someone over there I know, they're kind of get me out of here when you're trying to explain what you do, then, obviously you're not going to be winning too many clients. Is what we want is to have that rapt audience response when you share what it is that you do, that people are excited, they want to know more, and they get it very, very clearly. So if you've got, if your service delivery is very bespoke and you're constantly in that, reinventing the wheel, very customized solution for your clients, and you're also not so great at the sales and marketing, I find that a lot of people in this space, consultants, experts, thought leaders, learning professionals, You might be really, really great at what you do as a trainer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be great at the sales and marketing. And so that can be, you know, quite a difficult thing, because, you know, I know for me personally, I did not get into business to be a salesperson. It's not what I love to do. And I don't think I'm an expert at it by any stretch of the imagination, which is why, you know, I hire people to do this for me, because I don't love it, but they're able to sell what I do because I've extracted everything out of my head and put it into visual models. So if you're not great at the sales and marketing, and you're also kind of creating everything in a customized, bespoke way, it's a very hard way to do business, because you're chasing the next client, then you get the client, and then you've got to kind of scramble to deliver. And that can be a very hard way to do things. If you've got a proven system, but you're still not great at selling it, then you can become a bit of a hidden gem, right? You could be the world's best kept secret. So, you know, again, you're kind of sitting on a bit of a gold mine there, if that's where you are. And if you could just learn to communicate that, you'll be able to move over to the right-hand side. One of the main challenges we do find, one of the problems that we find out clients come to us with, is this bottleneck scenario. So they're great at what they do. They get lots of word of mouth referrals. They get lots of repeat business, but they're kind of a bit of a bottleneck because they're always, you know, in that constant kind of delivery phase, and it can be, you know, very time consuming, and it's, you know, ends up with the 6 o'clock at night when you're trying to have dinner with your loved ones and clients are still calling, and there's, you know, there's that kind of things are kind of blowing out of control in terms of the way that you're running your business. And it can be a very hard way to do things. And then if you get sick, everything can fall apart. So what we want to kind of aim for is this top right, where we've got a massive impact, where we're great at attracting those clients, converting them, and then delivering to a high standard, and able to help more people with the work that we're doing in our businesses. So some of the results that clients get when they actually take what's in their head and turn them into visual models. So Anna Osherov had a 5-minute presentation at a networking event and converted 50% of the room into her next program. So that was a pretty phenomenal conversion rate for a 5-minute presentation. When you think about industry benchmark in terms of selling from stage is usually about 10%. So for a 5-minute, 50% in 5 minutes is pretty phenomenal. And Leah, she's, you know, before she had her Think RAPT system created, was doing very much, you know, selling her coaching in one-on-one packages. And once she was able to package things up and present more professionally in the corporate market, she's now able to sort of do these $55,000 invoices rather than those, you know, much smaller little invoices, and working hard for each one of them. Katie Jane Romain went from a $300,000 turnover working one-on-one with her clients as a career accelerator to having $1 million turnover in her business in just 15 months, because she was able to take what was in her head, systemize it, and then turn that into a 12-month mastermind program. And in doing that, she was able to then scale and grow her business in a really big way. So, you know, you might want to think about how, you know, what your average invoice is in your business, and, you know, what it might mean to you if you could double it, triple it, 10 times it, for example, like Leah did. So when we're talking about creating visual models, one of the biggest mistakes I guess I see people make is they think, oh yes, so this is a great way to sell what I do. I'm going to take everything out of my head and I'm going to put it into a model, and that's going to go into my sales brochure. But if you try and put everything about your business into one model, it is going to be a dog's breakfast, just like this example on the screen. So what I've actually established in, you know, working with clients over the last 2 decades is that when we're extracting the information, we want to take it out and put it into 4 different categories. So, and each of those 4 categories answers a different question, and each of those 4 categories will become its own visual model. So to create a full set and a full messaging system, you want to create 4 visual models to have that complete set. And each of these models does its own job. So the first model that you want to create is called the results model. And this is about showing your audience what are the results that they're getting, what are the results that they want, and therefore allowing them to identify the gap between those 2 things. And So yeah, so that's the first one. So here are a couple of examples. We've got, this is Stellar Partnerships. So Stellar Partnerships works with charities who are looking to establish corporate partnerships, and what they're helping people to do is create those, down at the right-hand side, stellar relationships or stellar corporate partnerships. And what we've got here is that this is a spectrum that shows the quality of corporate partnerships, and it is a spectrum. So, any charity might have multiple corporate partners, and so they might have one that's failing and one that's stellar, and we might have a couple in the middle that have potential. And so when it comes to a results model, a spectrum like this can be really valuable, where we're measuring the quality of something like a relationship, whether it's corporate partnership or even, I sometimes work with relationship coaches, and that can be a similar thing where you're measuring the quality of relationships, and there's more than one, and they're not all in the same place at the same time. So a spectrum can be a really helpful shape to use for a results model in that sort of case. Another type of results model that we often see is a hero's journey style, which you may be familiar with, but essentially what we're looking at is a simplified version of the hero's journey, where we've pretty much got an opening to the story, a bit of a build up in the third step. Then this is the kind of the crisis or the challenge point that we hit in the middle. And then we have the resolution, which is usually when you come in as the expert or the professional to help. And then finally, the happy ending. So this often works really well if your audience, or if you're working B2C, if you're working B2C, or if you're working with very small business owners, or if you're working with an audience that tends to kind of be focused more on the personal side of things, this hero's journey can work really, really well. But we also find, a lot of my corporate clients tend to have more of the matrix style, which you saw me presenting earlier, where we had that bottleneck and the hidden gem and the massive impact. That sort of matrix is another example of a results model. So we've got those three different types, and they all sort of apply for different scenarios, and it depends on your own business as to what would be an applicable results model for you. So yeah, for example, if you are working with more of a corporate audience, it's probably going to be more likely that you will fit into the results matrix style of results model. If there are any questions, please feel free to unmute and shout out, or Bill and Kerry, if you want to, and Dave, if you want to monitor the chat as well, and let me know if there are any questions coming up in there too, but I'm happy to answer them as we go. All right, so I'll move on to the model number 2, which is the answers model. So this one looks at, okay, well, we've in the first model, we've established what are the results that we're aiming for. We know what success looks like based on that first model. So the answers model said, well, what are all the obstacles that get in the way of your clients getting that success? And therefore the answers to those obstacles. What are all the things, what are all the pieces of the puzzle for your clients to achieving success? What are the keys to success for your clients? So this example here, so this is Dixie Crawford. Dixie Crawford is an Aboriginal woman who runs a program called Allies in Action, helping what she calls white woke women to be better allies for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And so we've gone, when you think about shapes as well, and the way that we translate these, we want to bring in the branding into the models that we choose. So the hand shape and, the dot painting style is very appropriate for Dixie, but, that's not going to be the right style for everyone. So we want to bring your own personal personality and style into the shapes that you choose. And an answers model is kind of, we are showing that these are all the pieces of the puzzle that you use. The hand kind of works really nicely for Dixie's case here, as showing we want all these 5 things. And so, yeah, as opposed to, with the results model, we had a matrix or a spectrum or something that kind of has some sort of direction with the hero's journey. An answers model shape is going to be more that we've got all parts of a whole, that we need all of these things. And if one of these things is missing, the shape will be incomplete. So you want to think about, for your clients, what are all those keys to success that they need to achieve? And that's going to be shown in the answers model. All right, so the next one here is the process model, which potentially some of you may already have in some form or another, because this is basically this is your methodology. This is how you get your clients from A to B. So, you know, your client has a problem, they're starting here, they want this result that's going to get them to B. How are you getting them from A to B? What is that step-by-step process? So, you know, if you're doing, I'm not sure how, you know, as learning professionals, some of you may also do some sort of consulting or some other sort of complementary services around your business. But generally this process model forms the basis of your service delivery. So if you're going in and doing consulting, or, you know, it might be the modules in the training programs that you may run or that sort of thing. But it's this process model wants to outline that step-by-step process of how you get them from A to B. So here's an example then for Stellar Partnerships. And so they have this 7-step process. And one of the problems that this really helped to solve for Stellar was that before they had this, what was happening was, you know, because they work with charities, you know, with the bigger charities, they could go in and they could go in as consultants as a done for you service and have their 7-step process. They could do the whole thing, $50,000, fine, they can pay for it, all done. But when they were working with the smaller charities who have a very limited budget, you know, they'd quote on, well, this is how much it's going to cost for us to do the consulting. That charity couldn't afford it. And like, can you just give us a contact list and tell me who I have to call and have coffee with to get these corporate partnerships, right? And so what they were finding is that because of limited budgets, clients were trying to get them to buy tiny little pieces of the whole solution, which it was never, ever going to give them the full outcome. And so what we established once this was developed with Stellar was that now at every different price point, so if they've got a, you know, a smaller charity price point now, they can still offer the full 7-step process, but what they're paying less for is how much of their time that they get. So for example, 7-step process, you might, you know, be able to offer that for you know, run a 2-day training program, and it costs them $1,000 or $2,000 each to attend that. And therefore they can still get the full solution, but then they have to go and DIY it to do the implementation. Then there might be a solution where you've got a 12-month mastermind, and that might be $5,000 or $10,000. Or then you might have the still full solution where you go in and it's done for you. So you've still got the same 7-step process that you can use, and you can leverage the same content and that same solution, but it's the amount of support and how much hands-on work you as a professional provide that will vary in terms of the varying price points. So it just gives you a way that you can actually really leverage any resources that you may create. So, you know, you could, you know, even for what we've done in my business as well, is we have the process that I'm sharing with you now, and then we have multiple ways of delivering that, and where it's mostly done, you know, if you do it yourself, it's a much lower price point than if we're doing it for you. But all the videos that we use and all the templates and worksheets that are used, they're used and repurposed for every single package at various price points. So it just means that I'm never in a point of reinventing the wheel, and it just gives you kind of, you know, a way out of that kind of bottleneck scenario, because you've got a more repeatable way of delivering your service. Are there any questions on that? No? Good. All right. And then again, back to Dixie's, a very different shape again, having that kind of more footsteps, being again a B2C style of business. Then her, you know, her branding is quite different to the more corporate looking models that you might see. Another thing to be aware of as well in a process model is that what we're creating here being a process, and these are things that we're doing, that we want to be using verbs in the language that we're using on these models. So, you know, you'll see each of these, you know, confront truth, build relationships, deep dive is actually, that should probably dive deep, lean in, influence change. But so in each of those steps, we have a verb because we're indicating we're actually doing something. Which contrasts with back in the answers model, we're using nouns because they're things that we need. Okay. Oh, and actually one more thing I will say about the process model is in terms of the shape that we use, then we want to be looking at a more linear shape. And there's a very, the psychology behind this is that often when clients are willing to engage a professional for, you know, for a service-based business for a solution, they need to be in a fair bit of pain to be wanting to get out of that pain. And so what we want to show them is that we're going to get them out of that pain as fast as we possibly can. And so we know the shortest distance between two lines is that straight line. So if we have a shape that shows we're going to get them out of there as fast as we can, that's ideally what we want to do. So I know often we have, you know, I have a lot of clients who do work in the coaching space, and obviously, and in a coaching world, a lot of the work that they do, you know, well, people are constantly growing, and so it kind of can tend to be a bit of a cycle scenario. Even in that case, I encourage people to avoid going a cycle shape, because if you've got someone who's in a whole lot of pain and you tell them, oh yes, we've just got this process, and you're going to go round and round and round, then subconsciously we're going to be thinking, you're going to make me go round and round and round in circles inside my pain, and I'm never getting out of here. So we just need to make sure that the shape that we choose for a process model shows them that we're getting them away from the pain and towards what they're actually working towards. Bill,
Renee,
have you got something?
Renee, yes, there's a couple of questions in here from
Great.
one from Gary. He said, does it matter how many steps? Is there a magic number? And then David has come in, what if the step numbering alternated feet? Not exactly sure what that means. Maybe David can explain it, but are there any rules around the number of steps?
Yes, great question. So yeah, in a process model, we're aiming for between 3 and 7 steps. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of the magic sweet spot in terms of, you know, less than 3 is not enough, and more than 7 gets too unwieldy. So, you know, we can kind of handle up to about 7 pieces of information at a time. So that's kind of the maximum there. There's also kind of a little bit of bias towards odd numbers. However, I'm like, I love odd numbers, and if it comes out at 4, don't stick on another one just to kind of make it an odd number. I kind of, you know, I let the content and the intellectual property drive how many steps we end up with, rather than, you know, try and make a square peg fit into a round hole. Now, what was David's question, Bill? Do we want him? David, do you want to ask it again?
David, did you want to ask that question?
So it says step 1, step 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're all on the left foot. And I was just wondering, what if it said step 1 on left foot, step 2 on right foot? You have left, right, left, right, left, right, etc.
You could absolutely do that. Yep. That would also work. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay. So any more questions on the process model? Good. So we jump into the final model, and this is the target model. Target model is all about what are the benefits that you're targeting in the work that you're doing. So what is in it for your clients? What are those KPIs that you're working towards? So, for example, with Stellar Partnerships, again, when you follow their 7-step process, you get to attract quality partners, have more profit in your charity, build the profile. So we want these partnerships that are actually going to be profile building, and that's then going to help them to attract quality people to work inside the organization as well. And therefore they get to have a bigger impact in the world, because, you know, being a for-purpose organization, that's one, you know, the key driver behind these charities that they're working with. You may notice here we've got some alliteration. The brain also loves alliteration. So all those words starting with P, that gets me really excited, as does an acronym. However, I'm going to say, you know, great when it works, but please do not force it. So I've seen people force acronyms and alliteration, which makes things more complex, and we end up with a word starting with P just because it starts with P in here, but it really needs explaining, because it's not obvious and clear what you're actually talking about. So we need to go back to, you know, one of the organizing principles with these visual models is they're making things simple and clear. And we're trying to, you know, you have a complex solution. The visual model is here to make things clearer and simpler, not to make things more complicated. So it should be very obvious to your audience what these words mean when they see them. And we should be using words that they are already using, not jargon and lingo that is familiar to you and you know as an expert. It should be language that they already understand. So it's really important before you create these models that you actually do some market research as interviews and get that language from them and write down exactly the words that they use and reflect those words back into these models to make sure that we're speaking their language and meeting them where they're at. And again, we've got some alliteration here as well. So there we go. So Dixie, this is her target model. Now, coming back to the question earlier about numbers, when it comes to a target model, I've actually found that really 3 or 4 elements in a target model is more than enough. This is sort of something I really came across, realized in the last couple of years. Previously, we did have target models with, up to about 6 benefits in it. But what I found in the presenting, because when you go through these 4 models, you can weave through them and tell a story, and you can use it in a pitch presentation. One of my clients has done it in, I think, 3 minutes and 30 seconds is the current record. And you can go through all these 4 models and weave them into a story. There's kind of a script that nicely gets them joining together. But if you've got in the target model something like 6 benefits, it can feel a little bit like, and you get this, and then you get this, and then it's like, and a set of steak knives, and now I feel awkward, like I'm in an infomercial, and I'm still talking. Why do they keep coming? Like it just doesn't. The rhythm of it doesn't work. So what I found that with the target model, in terms of the rhythm of the presentation, is you want to kind of go, and when you follow my step-by-step process, these are the benefits, 1, 2, 3, boom, drop the mic. Really have it short, sharp and punchy on that target model to finish off on that high energy kind of sweet spot.
Renee?
Yes.
Just maybe go back to that last slide, but
sure.
David's raised a question again, which is always very interesting. He said, what are the gifts of an open spiral versus a closed cycle?
Hold on. I'll get David. Do you want to unmute yourself and explain what you mean?
Sorry if I'm asking too many questions.
Not at all. Go for it.
I'll draw my finger. So a cycle is like a circle, then it's closed.
Yes.
A spiral starts and then goes out and then continues on.
Yes. So it depends which model you're talking about, David. So
for the process. For
the process model. So actually, yes. I have used a more spiral shape for a process model, but usually what we've done is we've still had the end of it going off to show it a trend or a direction, showing that it's going up and, showing that momentum and movement. Yeah. Great distinction. Yeah.
Okay,
and then coming back to a target model, again, similar to the answers model, we don't need a linear shape or any sort of direction in it. What we want is to show that you get all these things. So they're all parts of a whole again. So this is the sort of shape we get on the target model. Great. And then you have all of those 4 models and they all wrap up and they become the gifts that keep on giving in your business. Whether it's, your sales and marketing, your service delivery, they really do transform the way that you do business. And everything becomes so much easier when you've got these intellectual property assets behind you in the business. Now, there's some nice kind of benefits to it. This is kind of like an emotional rational sandwich, if you like, or if some of you have has anyone read Thinking Fast and Slow? And some of you may have read that and talking about system 1 and system 2. So if you have read that, I'll talk in that, but I'll also talk about it in the emotional. So the results model and the target model, they appeal to the emotional decision-making needs of your audience and really speak to that evocative kind of side of things and how people feel, which is, it's going to immediately speak to that system 1 in the thinking fast and slow thinking. And the answers in the process model in the middle, this is going to speak to your audience's more rational, logical decision-making where, they really need to understand things at a deeper level to really make their decision to work with you and get you on board and say yes. So, and that's going to be the more system 2 thinking in the thinking fast and slow. So we're really helping by creating all these 4 models for our audience, putting them in your proposals, doing any keynote presentations, whatever it may be, writing a book, if any of you want to do that. But all of those sort of content marketing and, all those different assets that you might need, by giving these 4 models, you're giving them the emotional and rational decision-making you're ticking all the boxes in terms of the emotional and the rational. You're answering the why with your results and your target model. You're answering the what they need, and you're answering the how it's going to happen with the process model. So we're really just making sure we're giving them everything they need, but we're doing it clearly and succinctly and in a really well laid out logical way. Okay, any questions before I move on to the process for creating these models?
Yeah, Renee, I just had a
Yes.
quick question.
Yes.
So just with the models, you mentioned that we only needed 3 or 4 for that last model for the target.
Yes.
So does it matter for all of them? Is there a general rule that we don't want to have more than sort of 3 or 4 for each model?
So yes, so okay, well I'll go through them one at a time, and I'll stop the sharing so I can see more people as I do it. So the results model, the number of elements in it will depend on which type of results model you choose. So if you have a matrix, that's very neatly already got 4 bits in it. If you have a hero's journey, there's the 5 parts to it, with the opening, the build up, the complication, the resolution, the happy ending. If you've got a spectrum, usually we have 5 on that as well, but you could simplify it to 3 if you wanted to, or sometimes 4, but that's kind of between 3 and 5 probably on a spectrum. So that's your results model. The answers model, I would go for between 3 and 7. Although we have had some exceptions to the rule recently. We've had some clients working with some larger management consulting firms and finding that there is a bit of an exception there, but that's probably beyond the scope of what we're doing here, but there are exceptions to the rule, but usually, so for example, yeah, I will talk about this one because it is a, let's go advanced level. So for example, if you've got a results matrix and your X and your Y axis, you might have, so let's just go with the one that I showed earlier. So we've got mine, the service delivery and the audience response. We say, well, that's going to determine how well you do in your business. Then those 2 parts of the matrix, those 2 axes, could then become the 2 halves of your answers model. So we know that service delivery and what was that one? The audience response are your 2 things. So you'll have half of it's going to be service delivery, and then you might break down what are the keys to success in terms of service delivery, and what are the keys to success in terms of the audience response. So you might be able to break down those 2 halves, and in that sense, so that's where we've ended up with more than 7 in a couple of recent clients, because they've had, with those 2 halves, each of those has been broken down into 5. So it's almost like they're 2 separate submodels, but we've grouped them together as 2 halves of a whole. But because we only show sort of 5 at a time, and we're not dumping people with 10 at a time, we can get away with that exception. That's probably too much information for this first thing, but you're on it, Gary. Good, you're coping. Process model numbers, we're between 3 and 7 again with the process model. And then, yeah, finally on the target model, 3 or 4 is more than enough. Awesome.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure. Any more? All right, I will jump back onto how we do it. How am I doing for time? All right, good. So we have a 5-stage process for actually taking all that genius out of your brain and putting it into these intellectual property assets. So step 1 is all about clarifying the really important basics in your business. So that's the, where are you going and where do you want to be in your business? Who is your audience? Why do they actually want to buy from you? And we want to understand that on a very deep level. So that's looking at, what are the problems that they're coming to you with in their words and in their language? What is their worst case scenario? What do they want instead? And what is the best case scenario? And again, I can't refer back to, in this clarify stage, you want to be doing the market research so that you really are integrating your clients, your audience language into your models to make sure that you're not just throwing in jargon and words that you love using that make no sense to them. So that's the clarify stage. Once you've done that, then you move into the extraction, and we want to actually pull everything out of the brain, and we want to do this in a brainstorming way. You don't want to be sort of stuck at your desk. It's good if you can kind of be up and moving around and really engaging creativity using Post-it notes and whatever other tools and that you like to do to get things out of your brain. But rather than trying to work straight into the perfect model. We're going to pull everything out and then clean it up and get it, massage it into the right information. And so we do the extraction looking, using a specific set of questions for each of those 4 models, and we extract them one at a time. Then we go into the presenting. So as I said earlier, there's a script that actually helps you to introduce and weave those 4 models into a presentation, and it is like a concertina. You can do it in 3.5 minutes. You can do it in a keynote presentation. You can do it at a half-day workshop. You can do it a full-day workshop. You can do it at a 12-month program. So it really becomes like this concertina type way of delivering all your content. And so, but in the extraction process, and when you're actually creating the intellectual property, the purpose of using the script at this point is to test your models. So we haven't gone to graphic design yet. We've pulled the information out, we've massaged it into 4 pictures, but actually at stage 3 here, you're going to talk through the models out loud, draw them, or, have them just use smart art in PowerPoint or something, just to talk through them, say them out loud, speak to them. Because what happens is, in this process, as you say them out loud for the first time and you talk through them, you go, oh, that word felt really wrong. And actually it would feel more natural if I moved that one there and just changed the order a little bit. And it's only through speaking them out loud that you can kind of massage and tweak those things that you wouldn't have been able to do in stage 2. So stage 3 is really, really important and critical. And you want to make sure at this point as well that you're not doing this in isolation. You're actually presenting these models to someone who can give you quality feedback and tell you that actually you've put something in your process model that belongs to the answers model and vice versa, or you've cross-contaminated your models here, clean it up a little bit and make sure they're really, really clean. So that's step 3 is really, really important for quality control before you go into doing any sort of graphic design. Then in step 4, then you want to look at then packaging them. So, as I was talking about with stellar partnerships, once you've got that process model really clearly laid out, then you can look at, well, how do I offer packages that meet my clients' needs and also meet the needs of me as a business owner, and how I want to work with my clients, right? So you've got to find the sweet spot between those 2 things and look at various price points and how you might want to offer packages at different price points that meet your clients' needs as well. So how you can do that and do that in a way that doesn't sacrifice results, as we're talking about with Stellar, finding ways to have those low price points. For example, if you have a similar challenge where clients are trying to buy a tiny piece of the puzzle and it's not going to work, how could you package that in a way that maybe it's a DIY or an online course or something that's a cheaper offering if you want to, or perhaps you might be working at trying to have something at the other end where you're having more of the premium services and increasing the value of the work that you're doing by having that intellectual property there can really allow you to increase the price points of those top end packages as well. So that's what you want to do in stage 4, is base everything. You want to kind of revisit all your packages and make sure that they are based around then your Think RAPT system, so that you've got that really consistent, streamlined messaging and there's no confusion in the marketplace about what you do and how you do it. And then finally, step 5 is then that's when you create the assets. And clients who work with us, we do the graphic design for them. Then we turn them into slide decks. You want to create, sales brochures. You can create things like a self-assessment tool, for example. So if you want to use the answers model, once you've got that answers model and you're saying to your audience, oh, these are all the things that you need for success, well, then you can turn that very, very easily into a self-assessment thing that might be an opt-in on your website, or you could turn it into a quiz or whatever it may be. But for each element in your answers model, for example, you turn it into a statement. So if for one of the things in your statement is that you have a vision, it might be vision might be one of the elements in your answers model. So the statement in the assessment might be, we have a very clear vision that everybody in the business is bought into. And then you might have a traffic light system where they can rate it as, red, yellow, green. And so then you can do those statements for each element in your answers model, and then they can do a score, and then they can, then the call to action could be, hey, book in a call and we can talk about your results. So you can create tools immediately out of each of those 4 models that then help you generate leads and to, have those sales conversations and then close more deals. The other things that, you might be creating there, as I talked about, the sales brochure, slide decks, and various things. We often will also create, you would have seen the way that we animate these slides, for example, to show the models coming through. We also then, we can just export it from PowerPoint. Some of you probably already know how to do this, but you can export straight into little video, and then we can translate those into a GIF file, and then you can have animated GIFs to use in social media as well. So that can work really well in terms of social media algorithms and prioritizing video and images as well, in terms of getting more exposure as well in your posts and things like that. And that's essentially the 5-stage process. Any questions on that? All right. And then when you follow this step-by-step process, these are the benefits. I'm doing the script for you so you can actually hear it in action. So putting the Think RAPT system at the core of your business means that you can streamline the way that you deliver your services, because then everything becomes based on that process model. All your packages become really streamlined and clear. Then you get to stand out in a marketplace, because you get to become famous and known for this intellectual property. And people will start to talk about you as the creator of whatever that methodology is. So your unique methodology starts to become your point of difference in the marketplace, and the reason why people want to work with you specifically. It also gives you the ability to scale and grow your business as well. So if you want to have other people working in your business, delivering your services for you, but you also want to make sure that they meet your very high standards. You don't want to sacrifice results by having other team members on board and not living up to your standards. So being able to have everything, all your intellectual property explicitly laid out, means that you can make sure you're onboarding and training new team members or subcontractors to deliver the trainings or deliver your packages the way that you want them done. And there are multiple different ways that you can scale once you've done that, whether you want to create leverage products and go from working that one-on-one to working one-to-many, or if you're what we're doing actually in my business is we're now moving into a certification and licensing model of business as well, because there are only so many people that I personally can help as a consultant to create these models. So now what I'm doing is certifying people in the Think RAPT system so that they can then be licensed to go and do this with their own clients. And so that means that is the way that I can scale and grow my business, whilst keeping, head office nice and small and manageable for myself. So, these are all different models that I've seen my clients, implementing in their businesses as well. So whatever the vision is for your business, having these assets is really a great way to be able to scale in a more efficient way. And then once we've kind of got them in, got them extracted, this is an example here. Elaine Hendrick is an expert in outcomes-based reporting. And so you can just sort of see, I'll just go and play from that back to the beginning again, is we've got all 4 of her models in here, and in a sales brochure, we then integrate some copy in here to explain a little bit more each of these models. So, in a PowerPoint, we don't want all the extra words on it, but in a sales brochure, or, Elaine uses this as her proposal template, and then you can, customize the proposal for each of your individual clients. But she's got this as a template now to be able to show, what is her core business, what is her core IP. And this has, really helped to significantly increase her conversion rates when it comes to getting new clients. And another one here. So this is Adam Thompson, and he, you can see here, some different, obviously very different branding and a different way of going about things. But one of the things that Adam talks about having here is that it's really helped him to feel like he has more clarity about what it is that he does. Because he said a lot of clients would just call him and say, we need you, come in and do the Adam magic. And so when someone says, what do you do? It was very hard for him to answer that, because it's like, I don't know, I just go in and do what I do. I just do all these things. So having the clarity and being able to sort of really clearly articulate what it is that you're doing in this way can be really, really helpful. Good. All right. now, I don't know, we've got plenty of time for questions. I'm actually amazed. Daya's probably falling off her chair about how quickly I just went through that. But we do have a free book giveaway today. I'm clearing out my garage because I've got a new book launching in June. So that means presents for everybody. The first 10 people to go to this address and claim their book will get a free book. So if you might want to write that down, I think it's also been popped in the chat as well. So that's my little thank you. We're very, very proud to be sponsoring ILP this year. And yeah, we wanted to find a little way to give back. So that's it. And also, if you would like to find out more about how you can integrate this more in your own business, you can book a chat with Daya, who's our business development manager and who's in the room today. And we'll pop that link in the chat as well. Look at that, heaps of time for questions, Bill. Amazed?
Amazing. I thought you were going to do your razzmatazz as well, so maybe.
Oh, the 1, 2, 3, you rock.
You rock stuff.
I'll say that for the half day.
Yeah, I think, you took us through that really quickly, and I think that allows us some things. What's interesting for me, I guess, Renee, is just how you conceptualize models. I mean, what you talked about is understanding and breaking it down, but what is it that gives you that what is it that allows you to see models in a particular way and convert that for people? I mean, I'm a big model person myself. I've always had a situation where people are explaining it. So get up on the whiteboard and draw it for me, because unless I can see it, I don't understand it, or I understand it easier. So I think the question then is how can we all learn how to use that modeling process just in general terms as well?
Yeah, I mean I've tried as much as I can to systemize and make it explicit, this process, and that's it takes. That's why I'm training people with the certification, because it does take a way of thinking to be able to put things into the models. But this is kind of something that I've always naturally done. I don't know, it's when an expert speaks, or when I, even if I'm watching a TED talk, or when I'm watching anyone present any information, inside my brain, I have to understand things. So inside my brain, information's coming in and I'm filing it in, imagine it's like a room full of filing cabinets in my head. And I'm just going file. And then I go shuffle, boom. And I want to make it all the connections and make a picture. Like, it's what my brain does. It's kind of a sense making kind of brain. So, I've been, working very, very hard over the last few years to try and translate that into clear ways that someone else who doesn't have my brain can actually follow and do that system. And it was very quick to go through it today, but I think it's something that comes with practice too. Even though it's the way my brain works, and this is the only thing we do at Think RAPT is create visual models, I'm still making new distinctions all the time. There's new things that I'm learning. I'm like, oh, for example, as I was saying earlier about the answers model, exception to the rule, this client's got 10 pieces in their answers model. Okay, that's a new distinction. These things are coming up all the time. The more clients we work with, the more diversity we get in the clients we're working with, the more learnings we get. So it's, I don't know how else to to train someone's brain. I mean, all our brains have their own beauty and work differently.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think for people, for me, it's a process thing. I like process and understanding that. Capturing information in mind maps is another way to capture information, but then it isn't always a useful method for explaining things to people who rebel against it. I'd just like to throw it open to everybody now and ask to take yourself off mood and either contribute to the conversation about how you might have used models to show what it is you're doing, and ask or any examples from Renee on how that might convert. Irene, you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in how you link those models with an organization that might have their own strategic models. And so they're coming to say, look, we've got all these strategy models. We want to use this, you want to use this. How do you wind their models or any strategic type models in with then where you're going with the visual models?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different ways here, Aaron. So do you want to give you a little bit of background in terms of what sort of work you do and who you're working with?
Well, I've been a trainer in L&D for a long time, but I probably don't, I mean, really for the last 5 years, I don't have a client base. So I'm looking at it from probably the work I used to do rather than the work that I'm currently doing. But I'm personally interested in strategic models. So I write online training programs for organizations and for individuals. So often I try to involve a strategic model, and I'm wondering, how would I do that with a visual?
Yes.
Are they
so when, yeah.
each other or cancelling each other out?
So yeah, there's two different contexts here that we want to distinguish between. So one is if we're using these models in an external context, so you were using these models to promote your business, then you would use them to show how you work. But then when you're going into a client and you're creating content for them, when we're doing it in an internal context, we want to actually co-create to get buy-in and engagement. So we actually can work through using these models and extracting these models in a facilitated environment to then have them walk away with their own set of models for how they're going to move forward in whatever transition they're making. So they're two different purposes for the models, and so two slightly different ways of going about them and what they're used for. Does that help?
Yeah, just keeping it clear about what the purpose of the model is and when you use one versus the other.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
No worries. Got any more juicy ones like that? I like that one.
Anyone else want to ask a question? I mean, my interest is in, I think some of us do so many different things that trying to model it is a challenge. Do you need to simplify your business in some ways? Because I think one of the things I liked about what Renee showed in the session I had is that she demonstrated how she was using the model in her own business in order to develop that process. And it's this funneling process of using the staged process, I guess, to make things happen. And I think that's something that a lot of us don't do all that well. So the models are one thing to explain it, but then there's the other step of moving things through the process.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of elements to that, Bill. So I think the creation of the intellectual property and the models themselves actually forces us as experts to be clear in ourselves about what it is that we really want to do and where we want to make our mark and what our legacy is going to be. So it really does force us to kind of make some choices about, how it is that we really want to work and what our favorite bit really is and what we want to be the sort of thought leader in. So I think it does kind of, it does give you an opportunity to do that. So that was kind of one part. But then also, I have, larger clients that I'm thinking of management consulting firms, for example, where what they do is quite complex. And so what we might end up with is an overarching model, say for a process model, we might have a 5-stage process model, but then within each of those stages, we may have a sub-model which goes into more detail. Because if within stage 1, there's 20 things, that's too much. We don't want to give them suddenly 20. We want to then, again, condense that, simplify that list of 20 bullet points into another model with 7 or less elements to show how that then chunks into something really, really clear. So you may have, so you've got your 4 kind of key models, they would be the umbrella, but sometimes we do need sub-models that go deeper into some elements of those umbrellas, if that makes sense. Does that help, Bill?
So I think from my perspective with MindWorks, you've been around for 20 odd years, and we've moved from different things to different things, and some of them are still important to us. And one of the challenges I think that many of us might have is that over time you become known for one thing, just to one audience, and then you're shifting, and then you become known as something else, and you actually want to be known to different audiences on some of these things. And so it's a case of modeling the things that you want to demonstrate and bring focus to. So that's sort of where I was coming from that aspect. Yeah, good. Anybody else got any questions or comments or bad jokes?
Yeah, Renee, actually, I do have a question.
Yes.
So I get these 4 models that you've described here, and that becomes, I guess, maybe part of your pitch or your presentation to get a client. But when you're working through the process, like the how, are there different models again? I mean, there's, you know, like I think some of the examples you showed, you know, had sort of 3 steps or 5 steps, or, you know, something like that. So within each step, is there a model that we need to build out for each step as well? Or, you know, like, yeah.
It depends on how,
does that get confusing if there's more models?
Yeah, it can depend on how you work. So I tend to have 2 different types of clients. One is, you know, when they are the expert, and very much every time they're delivering with a client, it is the same solution. And so their process model will be very prescriptive. It might be, you know, step 1, create business plan. Step 2, you know, whatever it is. So it's very, very clear steps, and it's the same all the time. You know, it's a very clear step-by-step process. But then I have others, you know, and if I think about Irene, potentially, you know, if you're going into an organization, you want to co-create something, then the process kind of can often be a little bit more generic almost, because it's more of a coaching type model. When I've got coaching clients, for example, you know, it might be, the first step might be identify the problem, you know, define the end goal. Then it's going to be, you know, discover the way forward, and then take action. You know, it's going to be very much a bit more of a generic way of how you go about working with that client, rather than being such a prescriptive way. So it is going to depend, you know, if you've got a more, it just depends on the scenario, the type of service you offer, and how that kind of works. But yes, you can probably, you know, can you ever have too many models? You know, you've got a 7-stage overview process model, and then each of those has a submodel. You know, I'd struggle to remember what all those models were. I mean, what I like about having 4 key models is that I can remember those very, very clearly. And someone asks me a question, I can visualize the model in my head and just bullet point through and talk through it in my head, even if I don't have the visual response there. So if I had, you know, 8 process models in effect with all the submodels, I'd probably be really struggling to remember what all the bits were. So yeah, it just depends. Usually we don't need that many submodels, but yeah, it's kind of, it is case by case. There would be exceptions to the rule always.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. I think it's more like what you said, where it's a bit more general. So like a model that I use is release, realign, and renew. So I want people to let go of something, or, you know, get rid of something. I want people to start to realign themselves, or, you know, get themselves back in a balance in whatever sense. And of course, renew, that means just do something differently, do something, you know, that maybe you've made decisions in the past that may not have served you well. So again, we want to just renew our points of view, or you know, what we are actually doing. Yes. And they become, again, much more broad, right, than what you said, like step 1, build a business model.
Yeah, that's right.
A business, right?
Yeah.
So then, but underneath release, I mean, there's so many different things I could be talking about. I mean, it could be letting go of a belief system. It could be literally just take a breath. It could be, so again, that's why I'm like, do I need models for release, and do I need like within?
Yes. I would say, yeah. And because there are those with 3 chunks, then I would say, yes, there is definitely opportunity there for you to, you know, almost have a, I don't know, not like a wish list, but it's almost like a menu of, here's a menu of ways to release, you know, which might be, I'm imagining like a spin wheel. What's it, a pinwheel type shape almost, that you can spin it around and like spin lucky wheel. But yeah, you might have, I think that would probably.
So that might be more like ideas then, rather than like a process per se.
That's right.
I'm
because
hearing,
it'll depend on the scenario. You go, okay, release, and then we're just going to pick which one of these is the right one for you right now. You know, so does that kind of make sense? without knowing,
Yeah.
enough, you know,
Yeah,
much
no,
more about your
that's
business.
fine. It was just, I was just more worried about how many models and what's too much. I mean, it's going to be a lot of information, and yeah.
Yeah. I think with just 3 in your main one and then 3 submodels, 4 process models isn't the end of the world. I think that would.
I guess the idea, Renee, is to make it. I mean, the whole purpose is clearer communication. So simplicity is at the heart of good communication, but at the same time, you need to have the depth of what it is you're trying to communicate, but doing it in a simple way.
Yes. Yeah.
And
where you would use them as well is probably where that would be appropriate too. So for example, if you're getting up and doing a keynote presentation, you probably wouldn't introduce the submodels. You'd just do the umbrella.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The submodels would come in the in-depth delivery of the service.
Yeah, right. And Yoli, were you putting your hand up before? Okay, take yourself off mute then. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Renee, what I have with my social enterprise is I've actually looking at 3 very different audiences.
Okay.
And so each program that I'm offering actually has its own website, and I'm essentially using your approach for each of them.
Right. Yeah.
Nonetheless, what I'm doing is building community building and building thriving communities as the bigger picture. So yeah, my umbrella is actually huge. And then I've got quite large sub umbrellas to go with it.
Yes.
And then when I've done my process journey for each of them, each lesson each topic has its own little model. So I've got little simple models for each of the topics as well. So I've sort of trickled down the process, and it seems to work. It might seem a bit of overwhelm, but I only introduce the model for each topic as when somebody's in the course.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. But I do have a question for you. How long have you been running with the 3 audiences and the 3 websites?
That's what it's just now.
Okay.
So I'm launching them now. I'm done doing pilots and I'm launching them now.
Okay. It sounds exhausting.
It's okay. 2 are being launched simultaneously, and the third, a little bit of a lag.
Okay. How different are the 3 audiences?
One is a program called Stronger Boards about governance education, micro to medium not-for-profits.
Yep.
Then the other is Change Agent Project, equipping people everyday people in the community to initiate projects in their local community. And the third is Profit with Purpose, around businesses more engaged in local change.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think, I mean, they are connected, aren't they? I'm just trying to.
They are connected, but I've tried to have them all together and it doesn't work. So I've had to.
Yeah.
My UnityWorks website has everything together with links to their own websites.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just thinking about it in terms of like your messaging and how you want to be seen in the marketplace. How do you stand out? And if you're trying to promote yourself as the expert in 3 different areas, the messaging to the market is difficult.
It is. So I actually don't do all 3 of them together.
Yeah.
I focus on one, like the governance education is clearly one target market. Not-for-profit organizations and people wanting to be on boards. And then so they do tend to be, there is a little crossover, but I can separate them.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that when you love working with models, you can almost get a little.
It's a little addictive.
A model file.
Yes. I'll
One of the things.
I'm Renee and I'm an addict.
Yeah, one of the things I was just thinking about when we started MindWorks, Jennifer and I, we did a couple of things. One, Jen was very good at modeling things and even simple things like a jigsaw puzzle. that brings the things together with the central piece and the things that go around it. And then one of the other things we developed was a brochure, but what it was a fold-out brochure. So they had the 4 squares and then they overlapped, and each one was a component to what we were trying to do. And it was very effective because, you know, things were related around the center, but each of the other things was the different offerings and things like that. So I think models could be used in a bunch of different ways. And when they attract attention, I think that's the key element for it. So just thinking about that. But listen, Sally had a question as well for you.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, Renee. I'm a model tragic as well, and most of my presentations and sales meetings will include a model of some form, and so loved what you presented. It's got me thinking, and Yuli's experience. Excuse me, I'm just going to cough.
I'm struggling to understand. I don't know if it's my internet or yours, Sally, but I'm struggling to understand your audio.
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, Sally.
Okay.
Try it again.
Yeah, it's welcome to Australia and the internet. Welcome to Australia and the internet. Is this a little bit better?
Yeah. Maybe put your question into the chat box if you can.
Let's try the question in the chat.
See what happens.
Okay.
However, has anybody else used models in different ways? You want to try again, Sally?
She's going to put it in the chat, I think.
Okay. Does anybody else use models of different sorts now that they think about it? Because I hadn't thought about those 2 things that I just mentioned until we were looking at these things. And I think that the visual graphics that you can use in explaining things is quite powerful. And again, that saying, I want to get my message across. How do I actually do that? Whether it's my business or my offering, my program. You know, one of the things that I'm thinking about these days is, as we move forward as L&D professionals, we're not going to be just doing training. We're not going to be just doing programs. We're going to be actually having a process of bringing solutions and answers to those we work with, whether they're individuals through coaching or organizations that start with the end in mind and collaborate and develop the programs. And I think that modeling of how we present our offerings is going to be part of that message as well. So not just what we do, but what we can offer and the solutions we bring. So I think that's what some of the stuff you were showing us in those examples that you showed us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we don't have any more questions, I'm happy to show, for example, how we use models on a landing page, or, you know, different ways that we use models. If you want to see more examples, are there any types of examples people would like to see?
Would people, if you want to put a thumbs up on that or something like that, then we can do that.
You want to see a landing page? Yeah. All right, I'll show you a landing page.
Let's have a look. I think the idea is, if we can, you know, examples, I think provide a very good way to learn about stuff.
Sure. Well, this will be another advanced level Think RAPTing, because a landing page is a slightly different order. So usually when we're doing, so if you have what I call a captive audience, the order of presentation is the RAPT. It follows that. But where we don't have a captive audience, for example, someone's jumping on a website, we need to get their attention to hold their attention. So we actually want to, in a very nice and loving way, trap them. So we go TRAP. So the target model comes to the top in a landing page because they're not a captive audience. And so we want to get that. We want to talk about and answer that, what's in it for them, right at the very, very top. So here you'll see target model, and we've got here a little bit more information. We've written some copy that actually speaks to each of the benefits in that target model. Then we go into the results model, and again, extrapolate a little bit more information about that. Coming down into the answers model, and here you can see we've got a GIF that's just animating through that model. And then finally, the process model, this is how we work.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, you know, we just add in some testimonials at the bottom and then call to action.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how a landing page works. Any questions on that?
I think that, you know, the way you explain things is that you you show us how you've been using it as part of that process. So that's great. So I'm just going to throw it open. Is there any last questions before I start to bring this to not to a full conclusion, but the next stage of this process? You're right. Oh, Yoli, go ahead.
Yeah, Renee, I was just wondering, are metaphors a great way of identifying the images you want for your model?
Absolutely, absolutely. Metaphors are fabulous to use with the models. And again, we just want to make sure that they're on brand and they're appropriate for the audience. But yeah, I'm absolutely big fan.
All right, and Kim has asked the question, can you tell us about your half-day workshop? So that we've been actually asking you for the plug.
Sure, Kim.
which is what I attended, and I got.
Yeah, that's how Bill and I met. He came to the half-day workshop, and then here I am.
And that's you got to be prepared to rock, though.
Yeah. Dancing is not optional. So the half-day workshop, the next one is next Wednesday, the 12th of May. Daya's put the link in the chat as well. Thanks, Daya. And so 9:30 a.m. till 1 p.m. And essentially it's the same core content that we've just been through today, but we go into it in more depth. There's a workbook, there's more interaction and more, we just get to go a bit deeper into the content on the half-day workshop.
And can I just add that it's
oh yeah,
it's ridiculously inexpensive, and they've just offered you a discount code as well.
Daya, awesome! I didn't even know we had that. There we go.
So that's good. So I would recommend that. Well, listen, I want to start to wrap it up, and Renee, so thanks for taking us through that and allowing the question times and all that kind of stuff. I know from personal experience just the depth we can get to with some of this stuff. And thanks for your enthusiasm. Always love the interaction that we have with you. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Good. Round of applause, everyone. There you go. Good
Thank
stuff. Excellent. All right. Now, before we finish up, I just want to talk a little bit about what's coming up. We have another masterclass in 2 weeks' time with Kevin Baum and David Yago, who's on the call with us here. And it's going to be one that I'm really looking forward to this, because this is Kevin has facilitated a session for us here in Melbourne back in late 2019 that really just demonstrated the quality of first-class facilitators. And so Kevin is going to be working with David, and they've worked together on a wide range of things, and is just going to be a terrific one. So I thought, David, did you want to just tell us just a little bit about TOP and maybe, I know you haven't designed it yet, but just a little bit of a promo to see if we can get some of these people along to see you next week. We've already got about 20 people booked for it. So I'm really looking forward to it. And it's because, again, I love seeing master facilitators at work, which is what you guys are.
Well, I'm feeling nervous now because Renee has actually set the bar really high. So thanks, Renee. It's really good. So TOP stands for Technology of Participation, and it's one of the original and major schools of process facilitation around the world. And so TOP, like all process facilitation, is around enabling people to work through stuff for themselves in a structured kind of way. And most of this boils down to questions. And so one of the things, again, that I really liked about, for example, Renee's process stuff, the 5 stages in that pretty much align to the 5 underlying dynamics of process facilitation, just done differently. So what we're going to cover, as Bill just indicated, we're not quite sure yet because we haven't talked about it, but we are going to cover a bit about TOP and a bit about questions and a bit about conversations. So one of the things around conversations, there's like a set of archetypal conversations, for example. So about the future, where do you want to be? About the now, where are we right here, right now? How do we get from here to there, and so on. So, So it's about process facilitation. It's about enabling people to work through stuff together and arrive at an outcome that everyone can get behind. That's the guts of it.
Yeah, nice. And again, like I said, I'm really looking forward to that. I have put in the link to register for that masterclass in the chat box if you want to go there and have a look at that. So have a look at that. And again, we've got a few other things coming up. We had our, Carrie and I, we had last night, we had our first face-to-face meetup here, or not our first, but a face-to-face meetup here in Brisbane, where I am at the moment, looking at how we build and rebuild our tribes. And it was a terrific session with about, I guess, 15 to 20 people, something like that. We got another one coming up in Melbourne, which will be our first masterclass in over a year, or not masterclass, but meetup in over a year on the 18th of May. So we're looking forward to getting people along to that. If you're in Melbourne, love to see you at that. Again, it's on the events page on the IOP website. But we've also got our member lounges, so don't forget that they're up there available if you want to just catch up and network with us. We're doing them at this stage still at on a Monday afternoon. We tried that new time. We'll see how it's going to work. If not, we'll switch it back to the Friday morning based on what we're doing. But we want to keep people connected as much as we can. And then there's just a whole pile of other things that are going on as we move forward. And Carrie and I will keep everybody informed on that as we go through. So did anybody else have any comments or questions or plugs that they wanted to put in for this group and just say hello? Dan, did you put the discount code for the workshop in the thing?
Yes, I did. It's ILP for the workshop. Yeah. So
it's just ILP.
Yes.
Okay, that keeps it. I'm not used to such simple coupon codes. All right. Well, then I will say again, thank you to everybody for attending. That was a great session, and I liked the interaction. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Dea. Carrie, back to you to finish us off.
All right, another great session. So thank you very much, Dea. Also want to thank you very much for your generous offer on the books as well as the half-day workshops, and hopefully we can get you up here in Queensland so you can run it for us up here as well. So but when you were talking before about your mind, that spins, because everybody knows I'm so passionate about ILP and L&D professionals, and then people tried to ask me how to explain it. It's sort of like, where do I start and whatever. So as you were talking, I've actually developed a whole heap ideas for models. So I'm looking forward to meeting with Bill tomorrow while he's up here in Brisbane and start sort of putting those down and submitting them in. So, but thank you very much for that. It was really interesting and learning more about the visual models. Thank you everybody for joining. There's been some lovely comments in the chat box. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll see you either in the L&D lounge or in our next masterclass. Take care. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. So
Thank
long.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.